Hello again. This is Owen Holt with another Storyline tutorial. Today I thought I would show you a demonstration that I did for the Articulate Roadshow here in Austin, Texas. And this is a simple puzzle box, and it's probably a good demonstration to understand a little bit more and explore the power behind variables, triggers, and motion paths. So what you see is the published version, and this is obviously the completed puzzle box. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this so you can see what it looked like before I rearranged the pieces. The idea is pretty simple, and this is based on the children's toys where you can slide the puzzle pieces back and forth and try and get them into the proper order. So you'll notice if I click a piece that's next to the empty space, it will move into the space. If I click a piece that is diagonal, it's not eligible to move, but I can move pieces up, over, down. I just can't move pieces that are not next to that empty space. So the idea is to get these into order so that when you complete the puzzle, it will fill in that last remaining space. And right now it looks like I have everything backwards. But rather than go into that further, let's see the mechanics behind this. One of the first things that I like to do when I'm dealing with logic and trying to figure out what's going to happen, I actually like to use Excel to kind of look at what should my triggers be, what should my variables be, how do I measure or control the conditions behind the triggers. And what I really like about Storyline's triggers is that they're really, in many aspects, a very simple programming language where you make specific statements. And the statements are, do something when something else occurs, whether that's user pushes a button or animation ends or whatever else it may be. It's do something when something else happens. And then you can tack onto that this optional condition if certain conditions are met. So to try and figure out kind of what my conditions might be, I wanted to explore the relationship between the empty space and the puzzle pieces around it. In this case, my Excel shows a 3x3 grid. What I ended up with for my puzzle was a 2x3 grid, but the logic is the same. And I wanted to kind of test the 0 represents where is my empty square. It's where I've assigned a numeric value of 12. And then I looked at, well, what are the pieces around that can move? And you'll notice I assigned that the difference between one cell and the cell in the adjacent columns is a difference of 1, and the difference between any cell and the adjacent row is a difference of 10. And that's just so that I could avoid these weird anomalies where something might be 2 spaces away in a row, 2 spaces away in a column. I needed to be able to control, is it moving horizontally or is it moving vertically? And I couldn't do that if they both ended up the same distance value apart. So using increments of 10 across the rows and increments of 1 across the columns just allows me to account for that difference. So then what I looked at is if a space is 1 away, either -1 or +1, what do I want it to do? Well, if it's to the right, I want it to move left, and if it's to the left, I want it to move right. So I started to create a key over here. And if it's a -10, I want it to move down, and if it's a +10, I want it to move up. So again, fully fleshed out my key. And then I just added a little calculation here using what if I change that empty space? I just want to take the new value, or the value of the space itself, minus wherever the empty space is to determine what the distance is between that piece and the empty space. So let's say that the empty space is space number 1. Well, 1 is now 0 places away from empty, meaning it's empty. And using my key, I'm looking for 1s and 10s, and I'm only going to identify those 2. Those are the only 2 pieces eligible to move. If I move the empty space to 3, again, you'll see the -1 here and the 10 here. those are the only two pieces that would be eligible to move. If I moved it to 13, then I have a -10, a -1, and a 10, and those are the pieces eligible to move. So this kind of gives me the logic of what I want to be able to do in my storyline project is a calculation like this. So I need to first identify where is the empty cell. Second, identify what is the current position of the piece that I've clicked on. I need to do a little subtraction between those and send that to excuse me, send that to a variable that is my control variable. Then I do my statement of move this piece along a specific motion path when the user clicks if the control is equal to a specific value associated with that motion. So if the motion is left, I'm looking for a 1. If it's right, I'm looking for a -1. If it's up, it's a 10. If it's down, it's a -10. So I've worked all of that out before I ever really get into storyline. If we look now at the storyline file, here's one of my puzzle pieces. And you'll notice this piece has 4 animations associated with it. And each of those animations is exactly equal in distance to the width of the puzzle piece. So it's going to move it 1 puzzle piece to the left or to the right or up or down. And if we look at the logic on that, so I did cheat a little bit here. I used a little bit of JavaScript. You don't need to. You could do this with variables. And with the variables that exist, along with a couple of triggers, where you would set the control variable equal to the first value, and then take the control variable and subtract the next value from it. But I just decided to use a little bit of JavaScript to accomplish that. So I'm just going to pull in my puzzle piece 4 value, which should be its current position on the board. I'm going to pull in the value for the empty space, which again is the current position of the empty space. I'm going to take the position minus the empty space and send that back to the player as my control variable. So that obviously implies that I have some variables set up here. I have the control variable, the position of the empty piece, and the position of each of the other 5 puzzle pieces. You'll notice they started at P2, P3, P4, P5, P6. There is actually a puzzle piece 1, but I don't manipulate that through a controller or variable. It only shows up when all of the puzzle pieces are in their proper place, and it shows up on a layer. So here's the logic behind it. I'm going to figure out when I click a puzzle piece, the first thing I'm doing is calculating what's the distance between the piece and the empty space. And then I'm going to move the piece on a motion path if that control that I just calculated is equal to 10. I'll move it on 1. If it's and if I do that, then I need to adjust. The puzzle piece is now in a new position, and the empty place is in a new position. So if the control is equal to 10, what does that mean? Well, that means I'm going to move the puzzle piece up. So if the puzzle piece moves up, I need to subtract 10. It means it must have been on this row or this row. So I'm going to have to subtract 10 from it. So you'll notice that's what it does. I subtract 10 from the puzzle piece variable when the motion path completes. And that means the empty space has moved in the opposite direction. So I need to add 10 to the empty space when that same motion path completes. And I repeat that same logic for each of the other 3 motion paths. For the motion path in the opposite direction, if the control is equal to -10, I'm going to add 10 to the puzzle piece variable and subtract 10 from the empty because the piece has moved in the opposite direction. If I look at the horizontal movement, I have that same logic. I move it along one motion path if it's 1, and I subtract 1 and add 1 to the puzzle and to the empty piece. And if it's a -1, I move it in the opposite direction, and I add 1 and subtract 1 from the puzzle piece and from the empty space. And once I have all that logic built out on a single puzzle piece, the rest is really pretty easy. I can copy and paste that, and when I do, you'll notice the new piece has all the motion paths, and it just brought in all of the triggers as well over here. And all I need to do is change picture to some other piece of the puzzle. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because you'll notice I've actually already done that. And if I reveal those other pieces, you can see there's my grid. Now, then I have one additional thing, and that is to show the layer. And what I've done is I've set up some a trigger for each puzzle piece that I'm going to show the layer of success when that variable changes, if it's in its proper place and the next puzzle piece is in its proper place and the next puzzle piece is in its proper place, etc. So I'm going to check when I move puzzle piece 2, I'm going to say and check, are all the puzzle pieces now in place? So I put that condition on there, and I'm only going to show that layer of success when puzzle piece 2 moves if all the pieces are now in place. And I just copy that over into the other puzzle pieces. Whoops. And again, if you do this on the puzzle piece before you copy it, all of those triggers will carry over, and all you'll need to do is change the pictures when you're done. So it's really pretty straightforward. It's not that difficult, but it's kind of a cool result. And you could do this for a more complex puzzle. You could use this for whatever your imagination leads you to. If this is a put steps into the proper order that they occur, or whatever it may be. And I apologize for all the interruptions. I'm getting lots of notifications today. It's kind of a busy day, but I hope this has been helpful. I'm excited to see what you do with this, and please share your results. And I look forward to the next time.